Good afternoon, and welcome to the January 23rd, 2019 episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. My name is Tom Hollingsworth, and we're fighting a couple of technical difficulties over here, but I think we've got everything under control right now. We've got a lot of great content headed your way. We're going to go ahead and run through some stories, and hopefully you'll be able to join us like you do every week here on Facebook for your weekly IT rundown of the news. And I just want to say a special thank you to all of those people out there with pencils, because today is National Handwriting Day. My name is Tom Hollingsworth. I am the host of this episode, and we're going to take a little solo tour through some of the news of the week. So first up, I don't know if you know this or not, but Windows 10 Mobile is dead. And in case you didn't get the news, it's really dead. Microsoft felt the need to update people on this week because they announced that December 10th, 2019 is really the end of Windows 10 Mobile. No more support after that. So if you haven't gotten the bug to upgrade to the latest Apple, Android, or Chinese mobile device, you might want to look into that, because after December 10th, there will be no more updates. There will be no more feature releases, and they will not be fixing any more bugs. The question that we have that comes up now, though, is what kind of situation do we find ourselves in when everybody thinks that they have to have a new phone every year and they have to have new software features every 2 weeks, but we expect those software releases to be supported for 5 or more years? I mean, in the enterprise, that's kind of what we expect, right? If Cisco or Dell were to release a piece of hardware and then said a year from now that we're not supporting the software on it anymore, people would be up in arms. I mean, think about things like Ubuntu, where they have different release trains. You've got the LTS release that has the stable feature set where we don't muck around with things. And then over here, we've got the stuff where it's move fast and break stuff as hard as we can. I mean, we've had that all the way back to Debian with SID, which was, install at your own peril and hope that nothing breaks. But for Microsoft to come out 2 years after the release of Windows 10 Mobile and say, well, guess what, guys, you're out of luck. I mean, it's frustrated a lot of people. And I know that there are still like 4 people left in the world that are using a Windows 10 mobile device. Hi, Russ White, talking to you. Is this going to impact the way that we look at a DevOps mentality? I mean, they want to push software releases as fast as they can, right? Well, maybe we should stop pushing software releases and start worrying about supporting them, because I know for a fact that if Apple or Android decided tomorrow that they were going to stop supporting OSs that are 2 or 3 years old, people would absolutely lose their minds. But, maybe this is Microsoft concentrating on more important things. So who knows? All right. So it's bad news for Google today. We've been waiting to see if the GDPR hammer is going to fall on somebody big, and I think it found a target. It was announced this week that the EU is fining Google about 50 million euros. So if you want to do the quick calculation, it's just under $57 million because of their data collection practices. Shocker. There are 2 chief complaints against them. First, Google did not make its data collection policies easily accessible enough, transparency. And 2, they did not obtain sufficient and specific user consent for ad personalization across all of Google's numerous services. And in case you're forgetting, that's things like YouTube, Maps, and more. A French company, a French organization called CNIL, they brought the complaint in France and said, this isn't a one-off infringement. This is not the first time that Google has done this. So will this be enough to show the companies that GDPR really means what they're talking about? And does this have some teeth in it? We have to explore the possibility that the EU's lining up some pretty big targets. I mean, Google's a pretty easy one to hit. Their ads are fairly obtrusive, and they skate by on the idea that you don't really know what they're collecting. And once again, we'll remind viewers of the show, if you're not paying for the service, you're the product. So is this something that's actually going to matter in the long run? I mean, $50 million is nothing to sneeze at. It's also not a whole lot to really be worried about. I mean, Google will probably waste more money than that in court arguing that they were not at fault here, or trying to find a way to get out of this without paying the fine and without having to admit that they screwed something up, because that's kind of how big companies want to say. I mean, look at all the things that Facebook has been saying over the last 8 or 9 months, that they're not at fault for this, that it was somebody else that was doing all this data collection. And I mean, Facebook, honestly, is probably the next big target that they're going to go after. I don't care what Mark Zuckerberg and the rest of his crew say. They literally subsist entirely on collecting your data. on getting your information to people that want to pay for it. We know for a fact that all of their other ventures have not paid off as handsomely as they might have liked. But is this a big deal? And what does this mean? I mean, if we can prove that GDPR has enough teeth in the privacy realm of things, can we bring something like that here to the US? I know that California has been kicking around the idea of having some GDPR style protections, which would be huge because companies like Google and Facebook are headquartered in California, and that could significantly impact the way that they, collect data. I'll be the first to admit, if Facebook started charging even $1 a month to offset the fact that they don't want to steal all my data, would that be enough to get people to leave the platform? Or maybe would it be enough money for them to kind of say, you know what, maybe we need to pull back here and stop being, data collectors and things like that. So we'll keep up to that story, and hopefully somebody at Google will have to write a pretty big check pretty soon. Speaking of pretty big checks, hopefully you are still in the world of regular money. There was a report released this week that there are some people who are trying to find some other alternative funding methods. Thanks to Check Point, who's a really big security company out there, organizations have been hit like crazy with crypto miners in 2018. In this report that was released by Check Point, they said 37% of the surveyed companies have been infected by a crypto miners at some point over the year. And of those companies, 20% in total have been hit week by week. So it was a recurring infestation. Now, that probably says a lot about their security controls or about their ability to clean up those procedures. Now, on the bright side of this, in that same report, things have kind of fallen down as far as malware. So I know a couple of years ago, malware was the huge thing. If you want to think about things like WannaCry and other malware infections that were really, ravaging us and kind of asking for Bitcoin donations to turn things off. In 2018, the amount of malware infections fell to just a paltry 4%. So, does this mean that crypto miners have finally dethroned malware as the king of money making and security exploits? Or does this mean that malware will make a huge comeback now that we have this imaginary blockchain dollar bank account hitting the basement? There's a couple of things that we have to unwind here when we start thinking about this. So the first is that a lot of what you're seeing, especially with these malware infections, these are not the viruses of the 90s and the early 2000s, like the Slammer or the Sapphire worms, where people were doing things just for the heck of shutting down systems and gleeful anarchy. This is about business. And you know this because, well, you're seeing people paying. Cisco's Talos research arm did a really great job of this last year when they were analyzing some of these fake email. I got your chat logs from your mistress, and I'm going to upload them to the internet unless you pay me, like $200 in Bitcoins. Well, the thing is that by collecting all of this information, they can monitor when those wallets are actually touched, and they're seeing people paying. That's the thing. It's the oldest scam in the book when you think about it from a legal perspective. If you don't pay up for that image that you stole from your website, I'll sue you. Well, I don't want to pay $200. Well, would you pay $100? I mean, they're betting on the fact that you're just going to cough up the money. But with Bitcoin, they don't have to worry about that because all they're doing is stealing your CPU cycles. They're making their own money at this point. Now, the problem is that if the price of Bitcoin keeps falling into the toilet like it has been, it went from a high of 20 grand down to it's somewhere, I think, around 6 grand now at the time of this broadcast. It could be even lower than that. It's not making any money. I mean, literally, you can spend thousands of CPU cycles trying to find that next block. It's not going to fly. And you're not only fighting the legitimate miners who are out there doing this with like these huge rigs, you're also finding the people that are basically doing it for the cost of electricity. I mean, you've heard stories of giant crypto farms in places where they can be powered by basically free hydropower. You're kind of out of luck. I mean, some of the great reports that I saw last year were that they're starting to infect crypto miners in places where electricity is essentially free, like on university campuses. And university campuses in turn are seeing their power bills spiking because people are basically trying to take advantage of that. We've even seen the possibility of crypto miners replacing banner ads. Donate 5 CPU cycles, or while you're on our page, let us run a crypto miner, and you can view this content ad free. It's a huge thing. And the more underground it becomes, the more that we start sneaking these crypto miners onto systems, it's going to cause a huge problem for people. And, we don't really want to have to fight fire with fire. I mean, maybe we just need to go back to using buttons and bushels of corn to pay for things as opposed to imaginary blocks of nothingness. All right. Somewhat happier news. Moving on to some Friends of Tech Field Day, Veeam. They recently announced Availability Suite 9.5 Update 4, which follows last week's release of Funding Update 500 million. The new update from Veeam includes a cloud tier and cloud mobility features, which are designed to help enterprises easier transition to the cloud, as well as ensuring that users can still back up their data, being held in the safest data centers that money can build. With the focus on the cloud in the last couple of years, you have to think, is Veeam onto something with all of these features that are automating disaster recovery in the cloud? Or are they really just rearranging deck chairs on that data center Titanic? Now, I'm kind of on the fence about this. I'm not 100% sold on public cloud because I still haven't watched somebody open their AWS bill at the end of the month and then faint into a pile of pillows that they bought with the savings from not having to buy data center hardware this past refresh cycle. I've also talked to a lot of companies that say that they're not really seeing a whole big shift to cloud. They're still seeing a lot of hybrid where their people are moving in baby steps. So for this, I guess, Veeam's kind of hit on the right thing. You still have data center assets that you have to back up. You're moving those to the cloud. You would kind of prefer to have the same feature set and the same user interface that you want to do to back those up. And maybe in the cloud, it's not backing up to a tape robot. Maybe it's moving it to a different availability zone or creating a virtual cold site somewhere so that in the event that US East 1 decides to take a header on a Monday morning, you can immediately spin up assets somewhere in Oregon and US West 1 is your new best friend. But I mean, for a company like Veeam, they have to be playing the long game. And there are a lot of other companies in the backup market that are trying to do this too, because at the end of the day, the idea that your data is being held somewhere secure and safe in the event that a hurricane takes out Reston, Virginia, doesn't really hold a lot of water when all you have to do is evacuate all your machines from one availability zone to the other. Backup, honestly, is kind of an old IT mentality. And as long as IT is still looking into that whole hybrid model of some on-premises assets and some in the cloud assets, companies like Veeam are still going to be able to get funding. And the fact that people are willing to give them an extra 500 million tells you that they believe that Veeam's on the right track. Now, I hope this pays off for them. We have some great friends over there. And I know that we're looking forward to hearing what they're up to at a future field day event. But, I think that there's going to be a lot of questions about whether or not the cloud is the right strategy going forward. I will say that at least for 2019, Veeam's probably figured out how to make this whole thing work. All right, we're going to move on to the next story of the day, and it's another security story. Imagine that. If your internet's been doing a lot of strange things recently, the Department of Homeland Security thinks that you might have been hijacked. In an emergency directive published on Tuesday, the Department of Homeland Security says that they're seeing an uptick in DNS hijacking coming from groups affiliated with nation states. Specifically, in this case, it was an Iranian-backed group that was doing some really funky DNS hijacking. DHS is advising that you go in and change your passwords and do audits of DNS procedures to ensure that people are safe and won't get compromised by attacks in the future. Now, does this pretend a way that we see attacks being executed on a global scale by nation-state-backed groups? Are the nation-states doing this to collect data as a form of espionage? And honestly, this even brings up a whole lot of other questions a little closer to home. If you work for an organization that's a private company, which as of the time of this report, DHS is saying that they're seeing 6 or 7 privately held companies that are affected by this, but they also released a directive that said that they want the government IT to go through their procedures for DNS and things like that and give a report of their audit procedures. How do you do that when you've been furloughed? I mean, at the time of this broadcast, the United States government is still effectively in a shutdown mode. Honestly, IT personnel are considered non-essential in most cases, especially when your systems are kind of running on their own, except when you get compromised. And then the pager goes off at 3 a.m. and you have to go in and figure out why suddenly anyone who wants to go to state.gov is getting, I don't know, fisherprice.com or something. But it actually moves a little bit more into kind of a secure DNS market. So this is something that we actually have seen a lot of recently. At Networking Field Day 19 this past November, we talked to a company called Blue Cat Networks. Blue Cat is really big in the enterprise DNS space. DNS security, DNS administration, making things a little bit easier. I mean, with Blue Cat, all you had to do is go in and make a couple clicks. You can produce a report that says, yes, our DNS is secure. All the passwords are secure. No one's been violating all of this recently. Or you can look at companies like Cloudflare. A lot of people out there are huge fans of Cloudflare. I am as well. Almost all of the Field Day run websites in gestaltit.com run on Cloudflare. I personally use Cloudflare's Quad 1 DNS service here at home. And it's fascinating to see how people are trying to steal this, because I mean, when you think about it, a lot of security attacks now are not focused on kicking the front door in with a heavy foot, get through the firewalls, get through the IDS boxes. They're doing really crafty things like spear phishing or DNS hijacks or BGP hijacks. We're seeing a lot of that now, where instead of having to kick in the front door, they literally have you bring the traffic directly to their doorstep. They scrub what they want out of it, and then they send you on your way, so that you never know that you've been impacted, unless you happen to be looking at the little lock icon up there in the toolbar, and you can't figure out exactly what's going on, except things are running a little bit slower. It's a good idea for those of you out there who are running enterprise DNS. Go do some audits. Go try to figure out exactly what's going on in your network. Make sure that you have control of that and you know what to do in case someone says, oh, hey, by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but someone just hijacked your DNS or your BGP. It's always good to be thinking about this, because I laugh when I look at old articles of things about, like don't copy that floppy, or what happens whenever you get infected by the Melissa virus. Those are legacy IT procedures that we don't have to worry about as much anymore until we get hit by these things. But you need to be constantly thinking about the way that the attackers are going to be hitting you, because if you don't, you're going to run into a huge problem down the road. All right, so I think that's just about going to do it for this episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. I want to say a big thank you to all of our audience out there for hanging out with me while we work through some of our issues here. We're pretty sure it wasn't DNS this time, but let's be fair, we always figured out it's DNS. If you've missed any of this episode, or if you're watching this after the fact and you want to catch up on some of the episodes that we've recorded in the past, please make sure that you go over to our Gestalt IT Facebook page, where you'll see a list of all these videos. We also have a Gestalt IT YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and type in Gestalt space IT, Gestalt space IT, and you can catch all of the great episodes that we've recorded in the past. You can also check out some of the other great things that we do. We have the on-premise IT roundtable. This week's episode is about 5G networking. We just published a whole bunch of great talks that we had at Security Field Day this past year. Some of our Ignite Field Day talks. We also have some more great things coming up here. We're going to be hearing a lot from Cisco this coming week, because we're going to be at Cisco Live Europe in Barcelona, Spain. I know they're going to have some big announcements coming out probably Tuesday morning that time. So it'll be late Monday night or early Tuesday morning for the folks here watching back at home. We're also going to have some more great events coming up. The week after that, Stephen Foskett and Ken Nalbone are going to be, two of the folks who are frequent guests on this show, frequent co-hosts, are going to be in Austin, Texas for Tech Field Day 18. We've got some great presentations coming up there. You're going to want to tune in there. You can also check out me and my cohort, Ben Gage, at Networking Field Day 20, which will be happening the week of Valentine's Day. So expect lots of roses and chocolate to be sent home to our loved ones to apologize for the fact that we're going to be in San Jose, hearing great content from companies that are doing some groundbreaking things in the networking space. If you would like to learn more about Gestalt IT, head over to the website, gestaltit.com. You can also leave comments on these videos and let us know what you think. If you're listening to this episode in a podcast application, because we do have a podcast feed, we love that. We love that you want to consume us on your daily commute, or possibly when you're mowing the lawn. Do us a favor and head over to that podcast application and leave us a rating, or leave us a rating in iTunes, because people love to read those reviews, and that's how they find out about this podcast. And really, it's as easy as pie, which is convenient because today is National Pie Day. So go out and have yourself a slice of cherry or apple, and make the world a better place for everyone. And be sure to tune in to gestaltit.com for more great IT content. For today, for January 23rd, my name is Tom Hollingsworth, and I'm signing off here at gestaltit.com. We will see you next week for the Gestalt IT Rundown. Bye-bye.